have Brittany from Royal News Network, who's going to educate us about monarchies in Europe, not the British royal family. We've heard so much about them, but there are a lot of monarchies that we may not know about, or most of us be very interested in them because they do have a lot to do with history, and I'm a history buff. So welcome, Brittany. I appreciate you being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Francine.
I love your channel, Royal News Network. I have learned so
you.
much. I've learned a lot. But let's start off with Monaco, because America has a connection via Princess Grace. So her son, Prince Albert, is now the ruler of the country, and his wife Charlene is there, and they have she's there sometimes. They have twin children, and he has several children out of wedlock. So how do the Monegasques relate to all this strange family in the royals?
You know, I kind of think, looking at the Monaco royal family, there's kind of like this history of tragic love associated with them. I think it even goes like back to a curse or something in, like, I believe the 12 or 1300s. So this has been a long time. So it's not just Albert, but his sisters have also been rather unlucky in love. So it's kind of a tragic thing to see. And there were rumors that she was trying to escape the wedding before it happened. And, you know, she was away for about 6 months to a year last year due to some issues with her ears and sinuses, and she was in South Africa. So, you know, I think Monaco, they enjoyed the glamour, and so they kind of have a bit of more of that celebrity, I would say, than probably most royal families do.
So do you think that they're disappointed in the way Albert's conducted himself? I mean, we know that Princess Grace did her utmost to blend in and bring the monarchy into the modern century with all her class and dignity. Yet her three children have basically, I can't say thrown that away, but they've kind of tarnished it.
You know, I'm sure in some pockets there is a bit of disappointment, but at the same time, you know, it's a very small community, and it's also a very extremely wealthy community. And so I don't think they necessarily, I mean, I'm sure people would like more of a simplistic love life, especially for Albert, because, you know, he has two children that we know for sure are his, that were born out of wedlock. You know, there are always rumors that there are more. And so I think probably the person who I feel like is saddest in this situation is definitely Charlene. I do feel really sorry for her, and I think she does have a big challenge there. But I think the Monaco people, they kind of love their royal family. They come out for Monaco National Day. I was actually kind of hoping maybe to even make it out there within the next couple of years to enjoy that, because that's when they kind of have, you know, their big celebration and the whole royal family comes out. But Monaco is very much about glitz and glamour. And I feel like especially Caroline and her children bring a lot of that to Monaco, and Charlene as well, like you said, when she's there.
Yeah. I was going to ask you more about Caroline and Stephanie, Albert's sisters. How involved are they in the day-to-day activities of the country?
I think definitely Caroline. So she's the oldest. She's actually older than Albert. Is very much, I think, really the first lady of Monaco in many ways. She is there pretty much for every kind of big event. Her and her children actually take a very prominent position. They're kind of older than the other kids, so I kind of understand why they take such a prominent role in a way, because most of them are, you know, mid-20s or younger, and her kids are in their 30s for the most part. So, but she is very much involved in the day-to-day, and she appears very close to her niece and nephew. So that's Prince Jacques and Princess Gabriella. So those are Albert's children. They were twins. And so I think they're about 7 or 8 now. So she's very involved.
Legitimate children.
Yes, legitimate children. Yes, that should be mentioned. So these are the children between Charlene and Albert. And we saw this very cute moment where both Caroline and Stephanie were holding the kids' hands during Monaco National Day last year, and they appear very close. So I think that's very sweet. Like, the family dynamic within the siblings, I think is pretty strong. So.
Okay. In your opinion, this is just conjecture on your part, do you think Charlene and Albert are going to be staying together, or do you foresee some disconnect in their marriage in the future? I mean,
I
I don't
think
want to put you on the spot, but you're the expert, so I just want to
for
know what you
I mean,
feel.
at this point, I feel like if they were going to divorce, they would have done so already. And I mean, obviously there was a lot of rumors right before the wedding that she wanted to flee and they had basically hidden her passport. Those were kind of the rumors that we were getting, which is pretty serious. And she appeared to have like tears flowing down her face at the wedding. And, people wonder, are those tears of joy or tears of sadness? So there's a lot of questions about that. But I think at this point, my understanding is that they pretty much live separately. She has her own apartment, I believe somewhere in Monaco, if not, somewhere within the royal palace. So they
Mm.
live pretty separate lives, I think, for the most part. They do come together for certain things, but she has never been very, very involved in doing like foreign royal events or anything. It's usually Albert who goes by himself. So it was actually a bit of a surprise to see her attend the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II, because usually she avoids kind of those bigger occasions elsewhere in Europe.
Okay, well, they are a couple to watch for sure.
Yes.
Let's move on. Let's move on to Belgium. That
Yeah.
that doesn't get as much publicity. We've
Mhm.
got King Philippe and I guess Queen Matilda. Is that
Mhm.
okay? They have 4 kids.
Yeah.
Um, did it now? They came. Philippe came to power when his father abdicated. That seems to be
Yes.
a trend now. Well, I don't know how much it is in other places, but um, was there a reason that he abdicated and left it, or is just age?
Yeah, so there is again another scandal, this time also with another illegitimate child. So this woman had started to actually sue in order to be recognized as a princess because Albert was her father. And so there went through this whole court process. She is now a princess. She has a somewhat official role within the family, but because of this scandal, and Belgium is generally Catholic and, it's more conservative country, they decide because of the scandal surrounding it, his father went ahead and abdicated in his favor. And so that just kind of changed. And that's happened in Spain as well. So Spain had
Mhm.
an abdication around the same time due to scandal, and that was King Juan Carlos. And so he abdicated in favor of his son, who was also named Philip, although he goes by Philippe. So that's a very common name. And they just did that because, again, scandal and monarchies at this point, I think, as well in Europe, are at very precarious states because people are, they kind of like the glitz and the glamour, but they don't really like how that might affect their taxes or how much they have to pay for them and those sorts of things. So it's kind of a careful balance. So you have to be very careful kind of to avoid scandal because you don't want somebody to go, okay, we're paying for you. Now we don't really want to do that anymore. And the only other abdication that happened in Europe within the last 10 years was in the Netherlands, but that is
Mhm.
actually a history and tradition that they have in that country, where after a certain point, whoever's monarch decides, you know what, I'm going to abdicate in favor of, whoever my oldest child is. And I think that's kind of a sweet tradition because that way you can see the transition of power without the grief process. And, we've
Mhm.
seen the grieving in the UK, but when Princess Beatrix, now is her name, she was Queen Beatrix, when she passes, it'll be very sad, but her son is already king and he has been for about 10 years now. So
Do you
it's,
see that as a growing trend that it might be better to do that versus wait until somebody dies, like we waited for Queen Elizabeth?
I think it might be. And I think, again, because it's a kind of a nice transition of power. So instead of kind of there having to be this mourning process, it can be a celebration between the previous monarch and the new monarch. And so they can kind of celebrate together as a family. So I think this may be a tradition going forward. Queen Marguerite of Denmark, so she has reigned for 50 years, has said that she will not abdicate. So she will be kind of probably maybe the next big monarch to pass. Or there's, Carl Gustaf in Sweden as well. He'll be celebrating his 50th year on the throne here before too long. So, but I do think this will become a trend because I think royals are kind of recognizing too that a younger face often helps secure the monarchy as well.
Okay, so the next, you say Marguerite is 50 years, right, on the
Hmm.
throne.
Yeah.
Do you foresee? Well, it's such a small country. I don't
It is.
see it as being as big of a pomp and circumstance as we had with Queen Elizabeth when she passes, although it
Mhm.
is a big thing for the family and for the country. Do you see anything like what we saw with Queen Elizabeth happening in any of the other countries?
No, I don't really foresee that happening again. I don't even necessarily foresee it for Charles as well.
No.
She's really kind of the last of her age. And so I think even if she had died, her father's funeral perhaps in some ways was even bigger because it was more of a mourning process. People were at that point even more connected to the monarchy. So I don't see it being as big a celebration, but kind of like any death in the family, because a lot of these European houses are interconnected, going back centuries, there will always be a gathering of kind of the biggest, monarchs and names in that kingdom coming out to celebrate and commemorate the monarch, because there's only so many people who can really understand what they go through. And so Queen Marguerite, after Elizabeth died, she was pretty close to Elizabeth and wrote this very, very sweet letter about kind of her reign and how special Elizabeth was, not only to herself but to all of Europe as well.
Okay, when she does pass, her son is going to inherit. Frederick is
Mhm.
Frederick. Yeah, Frederick. I have an American accent, so I say Frederick. Frederick. So it's going to be a change again from female to male,
Mhm.
and that is also going to be happening in Belgium with Philippe. His, his next in line is Elizabeth. Am I correct? That's
Yes.
going to go from male to female. So we are going to get jumbled up in all the countries now. When they're used to either a male or a female monarch, now we're
Mhm.
going to get the opposite. Does that have any influence or feeling of the people when they change male to female, female to male? Does that upset the way things are run at all? You're the expert. You tell me.
I don't think it impacts it too much. Although I think for the UK, because Elizabeth had reigned so long, singing God Save the King for many people is probably very, very odd because they've sung God Save the Queen for 70 years. So, and that'll be something that extends for them quite a long time as well. But when you look at the rest of Europe, what's happening too that we see in most of these countries is that it's no longer the oldest male who inherits the throne. It's basically whoever is born first. And I think that's something, male or female, that everybody really does appreciate, is the opportunity to see a woman inherit the throne. And I think that's something that everybody's super excited about to see, especially in countries where maybe they're more conservative and that's a bit rarer. But I think it's something where everybody, even though it does change, I think pretty much everything stays the same. Royals at this point have very much a ceremonial role. So they don't have a super big impact on policy or government. So I don't think there'll be a big reaction to it. But I think it's exciting that there's going to be actually a lot of women inheriting thrones in the next couple decades.
That's true. But going back to where we started with Monaco, Caroline was the firstborn,
Mhm.
and
Yes.
uh, Albert has two children, a boy and a
Mhm.
girl. Was the girl born first?
She was. So Monaco is one of those
Mhm.
exceptions, is where they've
Right.
still actually said that they prefer a man to inherit over a woman. But this goes back to actually an agreement with France. So they actually have to have somebody to inherit it, and it has to specifically be a man, or else France can actually reabsorb Monaco. So it's very important to them versus some other countries to actually remain independent, to actually have, children to carry off on the line. And this is why it was so important for Albert to get married and have legitimate children and not just illegitimate children. And we also
Yeah.
see this a bit in the Scandinavian countries. So in Norway, it was actually the king's sister, Martha, was born first, Martha Louise, and then he was next. And then they made a law now, so where whoever is the firstborn, so that would be his daughter, Ingrid Alexander, will inherit over her younger brother. But they didn't make it retroactive. Whereas in Sweden, they actually did. So the king's firstborn daughter Crown Princess Victoria was born. Then his son was born and he actually became Crown Prince. But then they changed the laws. And so then all of a sudden Victoria was Crown Princess again. So she will inherit the throne after her father. So there's just been this big change. And we saw this in the UK as well, is that they amended the laws. So if a girl was born first, then she wouldn't be superseded by her brother when he was born. So I think that's a trend that's going, and I think everybody's very supportive of that.
Well, Sweden is the only one that does it retroactive, correct?
Yes.
So,
Well,
go ahead.
yeah.
Well, I was going to say, if England had, the UK had done it, then Anne would be queen again, queen right now. But so
well, she's younger than Charles, so wouldn't have.
Oh, that's right,
then.
she is.
But
I'm
she
sorry.
would have been then considered before Andrew and Edward, who are her younger brothers.
Right. Okay, I'm getting so confused. I have a list of all the monarchs here, and I'm going crazy here trying
There's
to
a
figure
lot
out.
of them, and all the title rules are different in every country, and the inheritance rules are always a little bit different.
Well, from everything I've read and what you bring to us on your Royal News Network, Crown Princess Victoria of Sweden is really intelligent, really someone that's beloved. Am I wrong? Or how does,
Yeah, people really love Victoria. She's very much a hard worker, and she's kind of well known for actually basically putting her hair in a ponytail or bun at pretty much every engagement she goes to. So she's very much kind of no nonsense. And there was a very much a sweet moment with her and Crown Princess Mette-Marit of Norway. Obviously, the Scandinavian royals, so this would be Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, are actually quite close. And so the Crown Princess of Norway was visiting Sweden with her husband, and they were on an engagement together. And Mette-Marit said a lot of sweet things about how she's so glad that her daughter, Ingrid Alexandra, who just turned 18, has somebody like Victoria to look up to. And she just said how much she admired her. So there's just this very sweet moment. And Victoria is also pretty much the godmother of every future monarch in Europe, pretty much. She is godmother to quite a few. So she is very popular and very beloved by most of her other, European counterparts. They're all quite close.
Oh, that's amazing. So she connects everybody. I mean, all the monarchs basically.
Yeah,
okay.
She's the godmother of Europe.
Yeah, we'll have to make a sign. Victoria, the godmother. Moving on to Spain, which we touched on before with King Philippe now and Queen Letizia. They came to power because of the scandal with his father. I think, am I wrong in that when Charles and Diana were married, they were very close to that family, or is that just what's rumored around?
They did actually go and visit Spain, and there have been rumors that perhaps, because Juan Carlos was known for being a bit of a philanderer, and there has always been rumors that he actually had an affair with Diana. There's never been any concrete evidence of that, but actually Diana, Charles, and the children did go out to Spain. There were just some close family connections there. And if you go all the way back to Queen Mary of Aragon, so she was married to was it Mary? I think it was, to King Henry VIII. So his first wife, no, Catherine of Aragon. I was wrong. Catherine of Aragon. King Henry the wife's, his first wife was actually the daughter of King Ferdinand and Queen of Isabella of Columbus fame. So there's kind of this deep connection that goes back with them. And, there's earlier connections as well, because all these families, especially the Protestant royals, connect back usually to Queen Victoria. There's basically a descendant of Queen Victoria in every royal house in Europe with strong Protestant ties. So that's something that's kind of unique and interesting. And so, there is a close connection between the Spanish and the British royals, and something that King Philippe and his wife Letizia, one of their first state visits, or one of their big ones, was to England. They went there just a couple of years ago. So that was a very big occasion for them.
Yeah, I know from watching all the documentaries about Queen Victoria that she wanted to marry off her children to all the monarchs around England, not England, Europe, so that they could all be related and there wouldn't be any wars, because how would you go to war against your cousin? But that didn't turn out too well, as we saw.
Well, she tried.
She tried. She didn't succeed. So next in line in Spain is Crown Princess Leonor. Is that her name? Leonor.
Yeah. So Leonor, And so she's a princess of Aurelius. That's kind of the designated title for whoever is heir apparent, kind of like the Prince of Wales in the UK designates the heir apparent.
Mhm.
And so she is currently studying in the UK. She's in high school. I believe she's actually going to graduate pretty soon. And so she is kind of learning the ropes. She has started to give speeches, and because her parents established the foundation of the Prince and Princess of Aurelius, and obviously there's no Prince of Aurelius now, it's just Leonore. So she oversees a bit of that event now. And she has a younger sister named Infanta Sofia. So they don't have the princess title in Spain is reserved for whoever is the heir. So yes, it's kind of everybody kind of has their own little titles that they use to a certain extent. So Sophia is Infanta, and then her older sister is Leonore. And so it'll just be interesting to see they're doing a lot with their parents. And it's just fun to see them growing up and being kind of getting more and more in the spotlight.
How do you remember all these names? They're driving me crazy. I have my cliff notes here. all these names. There are a lot of them there. As far as I can tell from doing a little bit of research, whatever research I did for preparing for today, Prince Albert of Monaco seems to have the most power of any of the ruling royals. Because there has been an interesting, I think, 3-part documentary on Royal News Network about Monaco and Albert's hand in everything. Is that true? First of all, is he the one that does have more power than any of the others?
Pretty much. And so I didn't do the documentary you're referencing, although I wouldn't mind seeing it. But so Albert is definitely in power in Monaco in more ways than basically any other monarchy in Europe, except I would have to say I'm not sure about Liechtenstein. So that's another principality, and they have their own royal family as well. And so I believe they also have a significant power within that country because it's very, very tiny. Much like Monaco, it's a very tiny principality, but with a lot of money. Luxembourg is a little bit of the same way as well. But Albert is one of the wealthiest people in Monaco. His fortune is in the billions, although ironically, his niece-in-law, so this is Tatiana Santo Domingo. She's kind of an heiress of a Colombian, I want to say I believe they manufacture beer, something ascent. So she actually allegedly has more money than he does. And so he's worth about 2 billion and she's worth about the same, if not more, because she inherited, I believe, a third of her grandfather's estate. So it's just kind of crazy, the interconnections. But yes, he has a significant amount of influence there, more than, the UK, very much more of the other governments. And royal families they're kind of diplomats of their culture, their tradition, and their kind of heritage and history. That's what they're there to. And they're also there to kind of meet the people on the ground. And so they do these grand occasions, and yet they also meet, the garage attendant at, a funeral event and thank them, kind of like Catherine and William did recently. They thank some volunteers. That's what royals can do rather than politicians who are more kind of just managing the day to day. The royals can reach out to a lot of different people. So I think that's something really unique and interesting that they can do.
And as I see it, they bring in the tourist dollars. That's what I mean. Whatever the country spends on them is brought back plus, because people want to see the palaces, the wardrobe that they're wearing, which we'll get into in a minute, and just see royals. I mean, we've been all brought up with Disney, so who don't want to see a princess, especially somebody that is doing good. We won't talk about the other ones, but so somebody that is out there working with the people for the people is bringing in the dollars for the country, correct?
Yes, that's the argument that they often use. I mean, palaces usually in countries are some of the most coveted historic sites to visit. This is especially true in the UK. I actually have been to most kind of the palaces. I've been to Hampton Court, I've been to Windsor a couple of times, but I actually haven't been able to go into Buckingham Palace yet. But that's, one of their biggest tourist destinations, in addition to like the Tower of London. So these places with these deep historic and royal connections, I think, are always something that draws people in. And I can say as well, having been in London for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee this year and planning on going to the coronation next year if it whenever it happens, it is something where, the streets were absolutely packed with people. Like everybody wanted to see a royal. That's why people were there. I met people from, all all over the world, and even, some people from who lived in London too. And so they do bring, I think, a lot of tourism and interest. And it's just something when you see a royal, especially when you're not expecting it, there's something I think unbelievably special about that.
Undoubtedly, undoubtedly. Yeah, you have your hotel reservation. I saw on your on your channel today that you're ready for the coronation.
Oh, I'm
Uh,
ready.
who is the princess that is now living in Florida? Where is she from? I forget.
Yes. Yeah, so Princess Madeline of Sweden, she lives in Florida, I believe in kind of the Miami area, Palm
Mhm.
Beach. She lives there with her husband and three children. So she's the king's youngest child. And as all monarchies have kind of streamlined and minimized the number of their members, as the youngest child, she and her children won't have as big a role. And so she's like, you know what? I just kind of enjoy living in the States. I, want to be with my husband. Being in Sweden is not necessarily critical to them. So they have lived there for a period of time, lived in the UK, but they seem to enjoy the sunshine of Florida. And then usually they spend their summers in Sweden. And so it's just kind of great to see she has three kids. And so Princess Leonor, Nicholas, and Adrian. So they hang out in Florida and have fun in the sun instead of in being very cold in Sweden.
Do they go by their titles, or are they just regular folk down there?
I'm sure they're just regular folks. I mean, they do have their titles. The children don't have an HRH or
Mhm.
a His or Her Royal Highness. The house stripped them of that because they just didn't deem it necessary anymore. But Madeline still has that. She still technically works for the household, but only gets paid when she goes to Sweden or does a visit or an event on behalf of Sweden in the United States. So for most of the time, I'm sure if you met her at a PTA meeting in Miami, she would just say, "My name is Madeline." I'm sure she doesn't go around going, "I am Princess Madeline of Sweden." I'm sure she does not do that. Some people figure it out. She's actually apparently friends with Tiger Woods' ex-wife, Elin Nordegren, because she's, I believe, Swedish as well. So they were actually, there's a picture taken at some sort of bachelorette weekend and they were both there. So apparently they know each other.
Very good. Okay, well, we just have a couple seconds left. Next
Yeah.
time we have you on, maybe in the spring, you can talk about the Asian countries because there are a lot of them
Yes.
over there, and
There are.
a lot to talk about for those. But in the meantime, I want to let the viewers know about your channel, which is Royal News Network. And
Mhm.
like I said, I have learned a lot,
Oh, good.
and I'm learning more today, and I plan on learning even more because I love history and I like to see how it's
Mhm.
brought up to the present. But you also have a new channel coming. Can you explain?
Yeah. So when I initially kind of envisioned my channel, I wanted to have like a Fashion Friday and a Tiara Tuesday. But as I started doing it, I realized, news would come up. And so even if I had a video prepared, I'd have to bump it to the next week, even though I told people, well, I'm going to have this video this day. It's like, well, there's this huge breaking news. I really do need to cover that. So I'm starting Royal Fashion News. So this will be a channel just dedicated to, I love fashion. I love royal fashion. So we'll be talking about that and just kind of the jewelry pieces and tiaras and all those things that make up kind of the royal families. Because one of my favorite quotes is from Queen Marguerite, and I don't think I'll say it right, but she said, "It's not about the carats, it's about the centuries," because a lot of these pieces have a centuries long heritage. They've been, even fought over, over 200, 300 years ago between families. So I think that's kind of a beautiful thing to think about, that even though, yes, they're very flashy, there's a deep history behind most of the pieces as well. So we'll be talking about fashion and, just royal tiara and jewelry and anything kind of related to that. So I'm super excited and it will be launching in October.
Well, I'm looking forward to that too. I love fashion. I love to see what they're all wearing
Yes.
when money is basically no object. It kind of helps.
It
So
really does.
thank you, Brittany. And I urge my viewers to go on if you're at all interested in royals around the world. Everything that you can think of about them, Brittany brings to you. So on that note, I'll say thank you, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you so much, Francine.
With over 30 years of experience in real estate and the mortgage industry, Darlene Mays provides knowledge and expert guidance to clients looking to buy or sell a home. Serving clients throughout South Orange County, Darlene specializes in the senior community of Laguna Woods Village. Darlene works with her clients to ensure the highest level of service, from the beginning of the process right down to the closing table. If you are looking to buy or sell, who you work with really does matter. Call Darlene Mays today.